Hi, I'm Tess,
Hi, I'm Sarah, and we are.
the Happy Edit Sisters. Happiness isn't just being happy, it's an embodied feeling that starts with how we approach life, our actions, and our mindset. Everyone has a range of emotions, and that's a good thing.
Join us as we dive into what it means to be happy and how we build a foundation for happiness through different lenses.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi Tess, how are you?
I am good. I'm feeling a bit sore. Just got back from a yoga trek, a hiking and yoga retreat, and it was amazing. It was wonderful. The weather was beautiful, but I am feeling my body today.
Feeling a little bit tender.
Yeah. I should probably do a little bit more stretching and release work today. How about
Sounds like,
yourself?
well, I was just going to say, it sounds like you had an amazing time and we've seen lots of pictures that you sent over last night. So yes, we were, or I can definitely say that I was very jealous and would have really loved to have been out there um, on the trek with you
Day,
guys. Yes.
someday.
Maybe one day. Just if anybody can hear, so little Rosa is with us today, so we might hear a few little snores from Rosa, but that's what it is, just in case anyone hears her. Um, yeah, I've had a good weekend as well. So we went out for a little walk. I say a little walk, 27,000 step walk with the kids on Saturday. Not a bad one. We went up
Very
to
good.
Kinder Scout. And I've wanted to go. I love Edale in the Peak District, and I've wanted to go up to Kinder Scout for quite a long time, but the girls have never quite been big enough. So we've done Jacob's Ladder and we've kind of done Mam Tour, but we've never kind of gone up further really than that. Um, it was good, really good. Thankfully dry on the way up, but very, very wet on the way back down. So we were literally soaked through to the bone,
Oh
like
no.
when I've heard people say soaked to the bone, and I'm like, yeah, all right. And we were so wet. But it was lots and lots of fun, lots of fun. Um, Kids enjoyed it. We did a little bit of scrambling, a bit of climbing back down. Um, so yeah, lots of fun. Can't wait to get back out next weekend now.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, exactly. No, it's nice, isn't it, to be able to get out at the weekends and just disconnect a little bit from daily life, go out into nature, connect with nature, and family and friends, and like, in my case, connecting with people that I've never met before, but it's always just such a wonderful experience. And I always love that, like especially in the groups that we have, most people come and they don't know anyone. So
Hmm.
they're just coming to, to explore, and they don't really have necessarily any idea of what they're getting into. Because, like they say, okay, hiking and yoga retreat, awesome, but what does that mean? So like they all come and they're kind of like just ready for anything, and it's super fun to see them connect with the natural world. A lot of them, they work in offices, they don't get out in the natural world very
Yeah.
often, and so they're just there like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, like look at these mountains, these peaks, this view, these trees,
Mm.
whatever it is, wherever we are. And but then also being able to connect with each other and make some, pretty awesome connections with people just over a couple of days. Like we've had people that
Yeah.
met each other on these yoga treks, and then they've stayed in contact and they're still in contact years later. And they meet up, and it's really fun, it's really cool.
Definitely, definitely. And it is so lovely, isn't it? When we were kind of walking up across the tops, across the ridge part. Well, it's not quite a ridge, but we were on this kind of cliff path, and we were walking past a few people. Surprisingly, actually, it wasn't really very busy, and kind of Edale kind of Scout area is always really busy. But it was quite quiet. And there was a lady that was walking towards us, and she was with a group of maybe about 8 people. And she obviously seen like the two kids. So Cora's 11, Aoife's 8, and then the dog Rosa, who's a pug. So quite a tiny dog, really, to be kind of up there. And this woman was like, "Oh, have you just come out for a little stroll?" He just laughed, and it was just like a nice little interaction with people, and
Yeah.
everybody saying hello to each other. And this man was walking past. I can't remember if it was in that group, or I think it might have been a group before, that was walking again towards us, and just seeing me holding this lead. And then he kind of did a double take, and he was like, "Oh, I thought you had one of the kids on that then. I didn't see the dog."
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. But it's this idea of connection that is just so beautiful, isn't it? Like, even if it's just those small little tiny conversations, or that just, that cute little comment from an old man, or like the passerby in the street, and I think it we have this we often have this idea that we just have to stay in our lane and just keep going and moving with what we're doing. And when we take time to break out from that, and allow ourselves to interact with others, and not hold any sort of expectation of what that moment is going to be like, but we're really just enjoying it for what it is, and enjoying the people for what they are. And I think that is so much of where we can find beauty in life and beauty in our communities, is not having any expectations of what someone's going to tell us, what someone's going to give us, what we're going to do that day. But we just go out and enjoy. I'm not saying like throw everything to the wind all the time, but just having those moments where you have no plan, and you just go out and like, okay, we're going to go for a hike, let's see what happens, and enjoy the journey there, instead of just going, okay, I want to get to that top of the mountain, but like spending each moment and really enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely. Which that leads us nicely, actually, and doesn't it, to the conversation that we were wanting to have today about kind of editing our expectations and exploring expectations, and maybe what that means to us, maybe then what that might mean to other people, and just kind of really exploring that understanding of that. It made me think, Tess, just as you were talking then. So obviously you've known Connor for a long time now, and Connor likes to have something planned, and especially like with a walk or something like that, is like, I really need to know where I'm going. I really need to know where I'm going. And we've been to Edale quite a few times now, and in other areas of the Peak District. So, we kind of know our way a little bit. Obviously anybody going out into the Peak District, always make sure that you dress for the weather, and if like the mist comes down, it can still be really dangerous. But we kind of know the paths, and we can see the landmarks where we want to get to, and always make sure that we've got like our GPS thing on our phone and stuff, so that we can find our way back if we needed to. But Connor's quite obsessed, really, in checking which way he's going, and something that which is like an expectation of himself, that this has to be perfect. This has to be a certain way. I have to make sure that this is the way we're going to go. And I'm a little bit more free than that. I'm a bit like, right, well, let's just go there and see where that goes. And, we can always get back if we need to get back. And there'll be a path there, because we can see the little path over the other side. And he really just went for it this time, and wasn't constantly looking at this app on his phone to see where he was going, and just kind of really tried to embrace it.
Yeah.
So really, I think really editing his expectations, and it made for a much more relaxed, adventurous walk, I think.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think that we could do that, we could say that for a lot of what we do, right? Like, whether it's hiking, whether it's, all of us tend to have an expectation. All of us have an expectation about something, right? That's what we do as humans. We put things in boxes so that we can understand them. We break them up, and we create expectations around that. And that's not always a bad thing. That's how we, protect ourselves. That's how we understand the world. But I think it's there's times that it's good to sort of break out of that and explore, like, okay, maybe I show up today and I don't have an expectation for something, whether that's, like, okay, I don't have to look at my phone all the time to check to see if we're on the right path, right? you know, obviously being careful, not just going out and getting completely lost. Like everyone, please, safety first when you're out hiking in nature. But you know, or whether that's like an expectation that you have to respond to an email right away from work, you know, like, you know, it's, you know, give yourself boundaries, of course, but then also explore what it looks like a different way, you know, see if you don't, you know, you don't always have to do something exactly at that time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay to just let loose a little bit and explore what it means to let loose a little bit. And maybe that's not comfortable for you and you take a step back and you try something else, right? But it's all about that exploration of our expectations and, you know, within reason, of course, and within, you know, supportive boundaries that we can keep for ourselves, but not like barriers, right? These like sort of open flowing boundaries that support us, but they don't restrict us.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. When you were talking then, like sometimes like a kind of images might come up for me when people are talking, and masks came up. So like having different masks that we might wear that kind of is the expectation, and that mask can be different for different situations that we're in. So maybe that might be work, and that expectation and that mask that I need to be this really organized person, I need to always be available, I need to respond to that email whenever that email comes through, I need to be on it straight away. I need to be perfect. I can't let anything slip. And then
Yeah.
maybe that mask at home life as well, like having to be a certain way. So whether that's, you know, whether that's this expectation of being a wife, being a mother, being a daughter, being a sister, you know, being a cousin, being a friend. And we kind of build all these different expectations, don't we, into life. That can sometimes feel a little bit unachievable because we might then feel like we have to be perfect in
Yeah.
every single situation. And for me, when I think about perfectionism, well, it's not real. The idea of perfectionism isn't real. Nobody can be perfect. Absolutely
Exactly.
nobody. I was having a little think test before I went to the gym, and I was like, I knew that obviously we was going to be recording this episode today. And I was kind of thinking about the idea of perfectionism, and, you know, something that I share with clients quite a lot when they might be experiencing perfectionism and these really high expectations of themselves is kind of, we might set these goals, and goals are really important. And we've spoken about SMART goals before, something that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bounded. But what we do when we experience these really high expectations and this perfectionism is that those goals keep shifting. That bar, if we imagine a bar, so we'll set a bar, and I hope everyone's able to kind of imagine this. So we'll set this bar, we'll get closer and closer and closer, and that's still the goal. That bar's still the goal. We'll get into like touching distance of this bar, and the bar jumps up somehow to another goal, and then it jumps up again every time we kind of reach it. And for me, that I feel like that stops us living in the moment. It stops us recognizing our achievements. You
Yeah.
know, actually, could we not have little bars along the way that we could then go, that's a little achievement, that's a little achievement.
And
So it makes,
celebrate each of those achievements, you know. And I think that we're, as you say, like we're so programmed to like getting to that next step, but then that next step never comes because we always set it another, you know, another step higher, or that other bar higher. um and we don't stop, we don't say, oh wow, look at what I've done, like look at
yeah,
like where I've come, look at what I've been able to do to this point. And even if that's like, hey, I had to take a couple steps back to take another step forward in the better direction for me, you know. And I think so often we get caught up in what we think someone else's perception of perfection is,
yeah,
because we tend to you know, look at perfection not by what we think is perfect, but by what someone else would look at and say is perfect. But the reality is we don't actually know what's going on in that person's head. We're just assuming, so we're taking on this, and maybe, maybe they tell us, so fine, maybe they do, but that's someone else's image of what life is, and that's someone else's materials, that's their expectations, that's their experiences, that's everything that they've lived through, and that's what they've created, and then you're allowing that to be put on you and allowing that perfection to mold how you view life, right? Which on one side isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Like that's part of humanity, that's part of living in community. But I think we have to realize that that is what it is. And so, when you get into those moments of feeling I have to be perfect for who? Right. And acknowledging, okay, I'm accepting that view of someone else. And so it's taking that step back and just like, like maybe even forgiving yourself. Hey, I forgive myself for buying into this, idea of what someone else has or what I thought that person had. Because you might even go to that person and ask them like, hey, like, do you feel like I have to do this, this, and this, and this? And that other person might be like, absolutely not. And so we perceive it because we, whatever experiences we have, we feel like, maybe I need to do this, I need to do that. And this comes also into our, like, this goes down not just to, the way our thoughts are working, but it goes down into the way that our body responds, right? This is a stress response. It's you're going into that sympathetic, that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. And for all those of you who are like, what, fawn? I've heard of the others. What's the fawn? So the fawn response is also known as the tend and befriend response. And what it is it's our body goes into this, stress nerve, like our nervous system that, picks up on the stress, and we want to make everything right. We want to make everything good. And so we go around and say, oh, I want to fix this. I want to try to fix that. I want to try to fix you, to make everyone happy so that, we can live in harmony. But the reality is that this isn't, there's one thing. Empathy is one thing and this fawn response is the other, right? Just wanting to help someone and support them that's not the same thing as like going into this fawn response and being like, I need to fix things so that everything is perfect, so that everything is okay. And so when we go into this, we need to be very compassionate with ourselves because our body is doing this to try to protect us. It's loving us, right? It's not doing this to like hurt us in any way. It's trying to smooth things out and make things easier for us. But the reality is we don't always know that we're doing it. We don't know that we're in it. And we start to pull on all of these other expectations and we hold it inside of us. And it's not just a mental perception, it's a physical perception, it's a physical response that we have. And we hold these things internally. So like, do give yourself compassion. Like if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I do that. Like we all do it in some aspects, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's good to know that we're in it so we can start to, little by little release that and allow ourselves just to live in the moment and not in these huge expectations that we set up for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really important, we kind of use the word like notice quite a lot, don't we, Tess? Like, to just stop when we're having these feelings, we're having these thoughts, we're experiencing these emotions, these that we might be then linking to these high expectations, these ideas of perfectionism, of stopping, just noticing what it is you're feeling, what it is you're thinking, how it is you might be responding to these thoughts, to these ideas of perfectionism. Because quite often people might say to me, like, it's just never going to change. How can I change that? I've always done that. That's always been part of my life. I've always responded in this same way. But the thing is, we can change. Once we become aware of something, we can then start to edit it. We can start to edit those expectations. We can start to edit that idea of perfectionism. And that might sound like, Sarah, that can't be that easy. No, it's not that easy.
No.
It takes time. And we'll still find ourselves getting into those loops, that overthinking maybe, that, ruminating, procrastinating. We'll still find ourselves kind of falling into this fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. And that's okay, because when we fall into it, then we can notice it again, and we keep noticing, keep noticing. And then we can do something different. Once we've noticed something, we can go, oh, what can I do differently now? That might be, that might be kind of doing something physically in the moment. That might be going for a walk. That might be doing yoga. Might be doing meditation, breathing exercises. Might be going to see a coach or a therapist to explore where those ideas of perfectionism and those expectations have come from, so that we can kind of really understand how that's developed, and how that's then impacting on our life now. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of share the idea that, it might feel a little bit ingrained. It might feel like this is never going to change, but it really can.
It really can. It really can. And like you say, it's not an overnight thing. This is not a magic pill and then it just goes away and changes. Like, when we do this work, when we start to notice it and we start to take one little tiny step, right? This is not like a big change. You can just make a little tiny change and then a little tiny change more. The more that we do this, the more that we actually start rewiring our brain. We change the way our brain is working, so that it's not constantly going back into these perfection ideals, right? And so if you think of it, I don't know if I've said this before on the podcast, but if you think of it like your expectations are like you're in a field and you're walking down a path, and that path is your expectations. Okay, this field has really tall grass, and you're wanting to start to change. You're wanting to start to edit those expectations, and you're wanting to meet yourself a little bit better. And so you start to veer off this path, and you start walking down, and you start creating your new path in this field. Now, as you're creating this new path, it's not going to be a well-trodden path. You're going to have the overgrowth of the field smacking you in the body, maybe smacking you in the face, maybe pushing you back a bit, right? It's not going to be easy. And so it's little by little, with each step, with each little change, right? You're starting to create that path a little better. You are changing the way your brain is working. You're changing the response in your body, your physical response, your mental response, your emotional response. And little by little, you start to create this new path, but it takes time, right? So it's not, an overnight thing, but the more you do it, the more you work at it, that other path starts to overgrow because you're not walking down it, right? And then that little by little starts to disappear. And sometimes, maybe you get pushed back all the way back onto that path, right? Because it was hard and you're tired and you're like, oh, or something happened and it pulls you back, fine, that's okay. You can start again. And it's this little compassionate steps that we can take. And it's releasing it physically, right? Releasing it out of the body. It's changing the way that you're thinking about it. It's changing the way that you're expecting yourself to do something, right? And it's just having that compassion and getting the support, as Sarah says, and getting the support that you need. Because, it's not always an easy thing to do. A lot of times it isn't. And so when we have those supporting hands next to us, that guide that can help us take those little steps and help bring us back when we're struggling, then that can be such a powerful tool. But we do all have the ability to change. It's just, it can take time, and it's work.
Definitely. And as you were talking then, Tess, and I imagine this field, and I kept thinking it, and you said it, you were like, I kept imagining kind of like, well, sometimes those paths might cross, and that's okay, because we might cross over that path. And I literally had it as a bit of a crossroads, actually, of, and I don't know whether you've experienced this, Tess, where there's been something that's happening in life, there's been change that's happening, and change is definitely one of the themes of the podcast this season as well. That, we get to a crossroads in life, and it's like, oh, I've started going along this new path, but then I creeps back onto my old path, and it's like, oh, what do I do now? Do I do this crossroad? Do I get back on it? And and then from my own experience, I can definitely relate to that in life at lots of points in life. And I
Same.
think and I think something that kind of I feel like I've learned along my journey, I think, still learning. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm not learning, because I'm still very much learning this lesson, is to trust yourself, to trust the process, to just kind of go with what feels right. Sometimes we go with our head quite a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we need to just go with what feels right, and to just trust that it's going to work. It's going to be okay. This is going to be fine.
Oh, definitely. And when you were saying that, I think sorry, I'm processing how I want to say this. That idea of trusting yourself can be very uncomfortable, right? Especially
Hmm.
when we have made so many quote unquote mistakes before, right? That have caused us harm, or that have, been difficult for us to go through. Um, and just taking a moment there to kind of acknowledge those times that when we do those things, and that helps us grow. And maybe at the time it doesn't feel like it, and it's horrible, and it's, I'm not saying that maybe you wanted to go through that, but we learn from it. And it's important to look at those things as a learning moment, and not as I'm a terrible whatever moment, right? I'm a terrible person. How could have I done that?
Hmm.
Blah, blah, blah. Like, not going into that negative language. And when you catch yourself going into that negative language, being like, okay, like, that maybe wasn't the best thing that I could have done, but I did it. I've learned from it. Let's see how I can start to change, to move forward, and let go of the expectations of what you should or shouldn't have done in the
Hmm.
past.
Yeah, because we can't change it.
No, we cannot change it. So, unless you've got like Hermione's time turner and can go
Oh,
back
I've
in
got one in
time.
my in my
Well,
garden.
perfect. But, and then also at the same time, just like allowing yourself to explore what it could be like in a different way in the future. Like
Mhm.
we create these images because of, as we talked about before, because we've had these experiences, our brain, our body creates, these images of what's going to happen in the future. And so our body literally responds to that memory,
Mm.
right, of what has happened. And it goes, oh, no, you can't do this because this is going to happen, and so just acknowledge, like, okay, notice how you are feeling it in the body when you go into those moments of stress and tension, or you're like, oh, I can't do this because of this reason, right? How do you feel it physically in the body? Because it's
Yeah.
not just a thought, it's not just emotion. We hold it physically. And the same goes if you're feeling pain and discomfort in your body and you're like, I don't know why it's there. Pause a moment, note, like, think about it. What's going on? Because every emotion has a distinctive feeling in the body. Every thought has a distinctive feeling in the body when it's all connected, right?
Yeah.
And so just taking that time to pause and notice, maybe do a little release work, right? Maybe just allow your body to rest, like
Yeah.
literally putting yourself into a position where your body can fully rest and release. Like, maybe that's what you need. Maybe you need to move and you just need to get it out, right? So, like, be very kind to yourself, but listen to your body, because your body tells a lot, right? There's that wonderful book by Dr. Oh, totally blanking on the name. Book is Body Keeps the Score, Sarah.
Oh,
Bessel
Basil Vander.
Van der Kolk, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
Bessel
it.
van der
Yeah.
Kolk. And
I
the body keeps the score,
should
and it,
really know that.
it and I was just like, oh, the name is that, it's true. Our body keeps the score. Our body keeps everything. So, notice how it's showing up physically in you, and
Yeah.
give your body, give back to your body, give back to yourself. And we so often we think, oh, we can't because we have all these things that we have to do, but that ends up adding into the difficulties that we're facing, right? When we give ourselves this time to pause, as Sarah was saying, to notice and to really reflect what's happening
Mm-hmm.
mentally, physically, right? And then to give yourself a little bit of time to give back to yourself, whether that's movement, whether that's rest, right? And think about it. So like if you're in that high stress mode and you've got a lot of activity going on in your body, what do we need to do with that? Well, we need to get rid of it, right? We need to release that tension in the body. So move, maybe shake it out, maybe go for a run, maybe whatever, but then
Mm-hmm.
start to pull it back. We need to do the opposite. The whole idea to get back to balance is to bring in the opposite, right? So if you're feeling all the time like you need to move and move, well, maybe try not moving. Maybe try little by little, first release that, and then little by
Mm-hmm.
little come back to a balanced state by moving
Mm-hmm.
slower, bit by bit, coming into stillness, right? And
Yeah.
this can be really, really difficult, but it's very important that we start to learn to do this, because then it trains our body, where it reminds our body, I should say, and our mind, that we can come back into this balanced state.
Yeah. And it starts to reframe, doesn't it? So it starts to reframe those thoughts as well, that I can't
Totally.
cope, to, oh, I can cope. Oh, I can manage this. I can manage these difficult thoughts, these difficult feelings, these difficult responses that cause me lots of distress. We start to go, no, I've got this. I can, I can do this. So I
Yeah.
think it's just it's so important. And if anybody kind of, The Body Keeps a Score, brilliant book to read, absolutely amazing book to read. There's lots of other books out there, but I would personally really recommend The Body Keeps the Score book.
Yeah, no, and he does a good job of making it interesting too. Like it's not a difficult read. Some of the other books are really fascinating because there's a lot of like interesting science, and there's a lot of interesting like studies, and but like they're not always the easiest to read and
Yeah,
like entertaining you. But
yeah,
yeah, he does a good job of like balancing both of that. Yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed that book
definitely.
too.
Definitely, definitely. You know me, Tess, any book that's easy to read is right up my street. Anything that's a bit overcomplicated and a bit complex is probably not going to get read.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are like that, like I love reading. I read every day, but like when it gets to the point where I'm at the end of my day, it's been probably a fairly long day. I've had a lot of things to do. My brain is probably a little bit fried. I just want to sit down and like just enjoy and not have to like force myself to like understand everything, and like there's times for that. There are times for that, don't get me wrong, but there's also times just to enjoy your reading.
Yeah. If
A
I
little
have to
brain candy isn't a
Google,
bad thing.
no, if I have to Google a word to understand what it means, that book's not meant for me. Or send my brother a message. I've not been known to do that as well. Of like, what does this mean?
Which is
Maybe not
okay.
more
It's
recently.
okay not to know everything. It's okay.
That is
Going back to
okay.
that editing expectations idea, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my expectation is I definitely don't know every word in the dictionary.
I think
And
it'd be
that's
very
all
hard
good.
to. There's a lot of words in the English dictionary.
Definitely.
We were actually, Michael and I were talking about that over the weekend, because when we were hiking, he was like, "Oh, I can't think of this word," and he was describing it, and I was like, "Oh, there's a lot of words." So I was like listing off different words that could have been it, and he's like, "No, no, no." Finally, we
Did you
came up
find
with the
it?
word. Yeah, yeah, but it took us a while, and it was like, wow, like we have a lot of words in the English language that pretty much mean the same thing. They're just slightly different.
What was the word? I'm sure everybody else wants to know what the
Innate.
word. Innate. I even know what that means.
Uh, it's not always the difficult words that you forget.
No, no,
Um,
definitely,
so on
definitely.
that, we always like to end, as you guys know, with a happy edit tool. So Sarah, what happy edit tool would you give for editing expectations?
Oh, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Um, I think a really good tool. So the first thing that came to my head, and we may have done this before, is just to stop in the moment, just take notice of what that expectation is, and just really stop and just think about it, and just think, is this serving me in any way right now? Does this help me or does this hinder me? So does this cause me more distress than it does make me happy? So I think that's the one that kind of came to my head, was to stop and just think about that expectation. And is it causing distress or is it serving me?
Yeah, yeah. Is it causing distress mentally, physically, emotionally, right? So just taking a time to really check in for, throughout your whole body, your mind, your emotions. It as we've said throughout the whole thing, this whole episode, like it's all connected, right? It's not like it's like these separate things. So stop and be compassionate with yourself.
Definitely, definitely. And I think as well, just to remind listeners, because, having a conversation about expectations and perfectionism, and, it definitely ties into like our core beliefs about ourselves, which are usually created quite early on in life. So, if people do feel after listening to this that they would like to kind of get more support, to, whether that's through coaching or therapy, to make sure that they access that, and they can kind of go into the show notes to find Tess and I's details. And there's links as well to like the counselling directory and other places as well that people can go and seek support. So I just thought that was quite important, just because it's quite an emotional conversation that
It is.
we're having as well, and can bring up quite a lot for people. So if it has brought up something that you think, oh, I need to really explore this a little bit more with somebody, then definitely reach out.
Yes, yes, agreed. Well, thank you so much for joining us today in this episode of Editing Expectations. As Sarah said, reach out for support if you need it. And we would always, as usual, love to hear from you, either through our Instagram, the.happyedit, or if you leave a lovely review or comment on iTunes or Spotify. We'd love that as well. It also helps more listeners connect with us and listen to how they can edit their own happiness.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you, everybody. And if you've got any ideas or you want us to talk about a specific topic, let us know that as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye. At the Happy Edit podcast, we're mindful that the podcast is not a replacement of therapy. If you do need further support, please do contact us on our contact details in the show notes. And we're more than happy to offer further support and guidance and direct you to places like the counselling directory or therapy directories. If you do also need further support, we would also recommend you contacting your primary healthcare provider. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you all soon.